Yeah, thank you. As I look at the bill, the actual language of the bill, and it's very brief, just a
Right.
page and a half. I'm not sure it does much. I'm not sure it does much that will harm the CSU and those who oppose it. I'm not sure it does much that will help the supporters. It says, if I read it correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Assemblyman, but it just says that a finalist determined by the trustees has to appear in public. Now, the trustees could determine that there are 5 finalists for a position and have them all appear. In that case, I could see it dissuading good candidates from applying, because I could see people who were presidents in other institutions or have other high positions not wanting to let their campuses know they're looking. If they, as one of 5, meaning 80% of them won't get the job, would be exposed to the public. But it seems to me that under this bill, the Board of Trustees can decide that only one finalist will go forward. If that's the case, I don't think that many people would be dissuaded from applying, because if you know that you're only going to be what would basically be a pro forma, make a pro forma appearance in front of the campus after you've really already been chosen as the president, which is in fact what will happen under this bill. The trustees, I am quite confident, whether good or bad, the trustees will choose somebody, the committees will meet, the person who is anointed will then go before the campus, perhaps one day before he or she's offered a contract. If this bill prohibits that kind of activity, let me know, but it doesn't seem to. So I'm not sure it hurts the CSU. I'm surprised to see the student groups against it, and that makes me take pause in supporting the bill. But right now, I think it doesn't do a lot of harm or a lot of good. I don't think it changes a whole lot. I think it probably is a good thing for the person who's been anointed to appear before the campus community once before he or she is actually hired. But please correct me if I'm reading this wrong.
I would like to hear from the author about this clarification. So the bill, you are not, well, go ahead, you explain it.
Sure, absolutely. I want to first off reiterate the point of the fact of that the intent of the bill specifically is to be an inclusive environment. This is not an us versus them, but to allow for the conversation for faculty, students, community stakeholders alike to participate in this opportunity to be invested in the success of the president of the campus. Having said that, you are accurate in the intent of the legislation to focus on that of the finalist before being publicly appointed as the president, to participate at least one public forum. And as a result of the forum, regardless of what occurs, the CSUs still have the opportunity to make that appointment. But again, it's just to allow for the opportunity for inclusivity and transparency in this way, to have stakeholders feel like they are part of the process. I want to also mention that I also recognize the importance of the advisory committee, to which various stakeholders from these various other segments also are represented to this committee and part of this process. At the same time, we all know how busy we are. We are jumping between different committees, so by default, students are in their classrooms. They're not able to be at this committee or be represented or have a conversation. Lives are very busy, and so this provides a public opportunity to say we want to afford the opportunity for that input and dialogue. But again, I want to be very clear that the intent of the legislation is to be more inclusive of everybody, and if it's this committee's wish to narrow in scope the language to say a finalist to the finalist, I'd be willing to work with the committee and the chair to try and find a way to make this successful.
Well, I think that's a very important distinction here. A finalist is different than the finalist. You know, I mean, I would agree with Senator Block that it does send a chilling effect if you've got 5 people, 4 people in front of an audience and you're not selected, and then so the cat's out of the bag. I think that's uncomfortable for people.
But it does give the trustees the right to decide whether they just call. You don't call anybody a finalist until you get down to 1. Everybody else is a semifinalist. And so as long as the power is vested in the trustees to determine that, and it seems like the trustees would probably wisely limit finalist designation to just the last person standing, I think it's fine the way it is. But
Senator Pan.
Thank you so very much. I do think there's value to having, whether it's, and actually I agree with Senator Block that we should actually leave the definition of finalists to the CSU trustees, right? I mean, they may decide that maybe they want 2 candidates to show up or only 1. And I understand that having served on search committees, the delicate nature of search, and when you have candidates who are very talented and probably hold positions in other institutions, there are certain stages of which, of course, you don't want to reveal your applying, but this is pretty close to the end. So, probably at that point, if you are doing your job, you're already vetting the person, you've already talked to a lot of people about what this person is, and probably the word has gotten out that that person's looking by the time you get to that stage. So I'm not sure, because if it were so secretive that no one else knew, you're probably not really vetting your candidate well enough for such a high-profile position as well. I mean, there's a point where essentially you have to start talking to people. But that aside, I do think this is a valuable way of, for both, not only for the campus, but also for the candidate. While you're talking in your individual committee, certain representations will be made on both sides. This is an opportunity before the final signature on the contract, whatever, for the president, for both the campus not only to have a chance to get to know this potential president and actually, maybe pro forma, but if it turns out the interaction goes really badly, there might be a thought, hey, wait a minute, maybe we made a mistake. We need to do some more vetting. Vice versa for the presidential candidate. They've been told certain things about the campus. They show up. They're starting to hear different things. And they may say, you know what, before I sign the dotted line, there's some more questions I just want to clarify before I sign up, because you didn't tell me about this, but I had a whole bunch of faculty members or a bunch of students bring this up, and no one told me anything about what's going on this campus. So I do think it's a valuable thing to have happen before we actually formally appoint the person, because I think that vetting, hopefully it is pro forma, but it's, it may not be as pro forma. If something comes up, that is going to be important for the success of that president. I mean, that's the thing, is we want the campus to be successful, and we want the president to be successful as the leader of that campus. And so having that interaction. So, I mean, there is certainly a lot that's going to be found out with a representative group of nominating, with the appointment committee, search committee. But the ability to now say, I got a chance to meet with the campus, get a feel for them, they got a feel for me, it looks like it's going to work. Obviously the real work happens when I sign on the dotted line, but that initial encounter may be very important for that, for any final discussions before signing the dotted line to ensure that success. So I certainly am supportive of this bill, and I think it'll be very valuable and important. And I would actually leave it to the trustees to decide how many finalists. They'll be very sensitive to that. If it's that one, that's fine. If they decide there's 2 or 3 candidates, I mean, I think the trustees can handle that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I respond?
Okay. Well, I want to ask the CSU. The bill, how would you feel about just a finalist? A final.
Mm-hmm. I do think we still have some concerns with that, and one of the reasons is, in my opening statement, I did mention the word executive compensation. One of the aspects of our process right now is a very tight timeline on how we've done these. We've conducted 12 of these searches. Of the last 12 presidential searches, 10 of those have come in at the incumbent salary, and 2 of them actually come in under the incumbent salary. One of the reasons for that is the timeline that we have. Right now, the semi-finalists, when they have those final 3 to 4 candidates, when they meet with the full board interviews them, makes a decision, and a letter is signed within 2 hours of that decision being made. And one of the reasons why that's an important step in our process is because we can't have our candidates then cannot play us from one campus where they might say, I have a job offer over here. And that's one of the reasons why we have been able to keep executive compensation where it's at. I also just like to say, it is an optional part of our process now to have these open forums. And before the semifinals go into the interview process, we asked them if they would be open to that. The majority of people would drop out. And so it is part of the selection committee process to decide to do that or not to do that. And it has always been decided not to do that because of the number of candidates that would drop out. So, and I just want to say that we also strongly encourage these candidates to be meeting with our campuses. Generally speaking, they come to the campus within 30 days of the appointment. So we're really just talking about, is it pro forma? And if so, what could be gained or what could be undermined? And that's really the question. I go back to the committee analysis, which I think is quite strong on that. So you have two outcomes. One, you have a candidate that has already gone through the process, has been vetted by everyone, and again, there's that veto power of the selection committee. And all members of the selection committee are at every single one of those meetings. And so if you already have that veto power, they've had that strong vetting, they get to the campus, they're going to not say much. Or if it goes badly, and then a different decision is made, you have opened up the process, and then the confidentiality is undermined. So I don't see what the upshot here is of having that.
Senator Hancock.
Yeah, and I think the student representative wanted to say something too.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Senator. I just wanted to note the Assembly member did state that sometimes the students aren't attend the meetings because they may have class. Well, that's not the case because all members of the advisory committee are given the dates for the meetings that the advisory committee will hold. And so before you decide to serve on the advisory committee, you're informed of the dates and you're made well aware in advance of when those dates are. And so if you go to an open forum process, that does not guarantee students would attend this open forum process. And that goes back to my point that there would be more influential stakeholders that would take advantage of that opportunity, not the students. But when you have an advisory group, a student is there that is elected by the students or selected by a student body president who is elected by the students to represent the students, and they are there throughout the entire process. So that ensures consistency and a student representation, which is important for the students, and it should speak volumes that the statewide student association is opposed to this.
Actually, it does speak very strongly to me. And this is a bill, I've talked with the Assembly member about it, that I have problems with. And let me just say, I think it's good process for a candidate who wants to lead an institution to visit. Maybe many small informal visits to talk to the faculty, talk to the students, see what's going on. I think it's probably good process to have a campus forum of some sort. I've been very interested in cultural change in many of our institutions. And let me just say what gives me pause here. Some of the testimony and support, words like restore confidence, distrust, genuine participation. So would a forum be more genuine participation? Is there some sort of issue here? The bill also doesn't encourage the trustees or even require the trustees. It prohibits the trustees from appointing anyone unless this happens. So this seems more like there's some other issues going on here than just best process in making appointments. Now, having been in local government, where we have to appoint city managers and then we have to approve the appointments of department heads, I don't know what would happen if you had finalists appearing at a forum, which given the wording of some of this, gives the impression that we're talking about a vetting meeting where there'll be some kind of vote or people can say, we don't like you. And my experience with campuses where that happens, and I've had some experience with that too, is you just get a toxic atmosphere. And I'm not sure that's a good way to build institutions. So I need some clarification, and I wonder how the proponents of the bill would feel about requiring a meeting as opposed to prohibiting the trustees from appointing unless, and whether we could say the chancellor designate or something other than this issue of finalists or finalists.
CSU.
What?
President, CSU.
President. Yeah, well, you know how it is. Right. Those are some of the things that that just make me, I'm also not sure transparency is the greatest issue in making selections for leadership in an administrative position or a leadership position, like a city manager or whatever. Sometimes it's inclusiveness, it's sensitivity to the needs of all the stakeholders in the institution. So for me, again, I would just like some comments from the author because, or maybe from the proponents too. What are we trying to do here?
Right.
Do we not like the last group of chancellors or
Right.
what?
Let me come and thank you very much, Senator Hancock, for your comments. Part of the impetus for this particularly was that at San Jose State University, in which area that I represent, the president appointment was made without this community forum. In fact, since the policy changed in 2011, not one public forum has occurred since the policy change for any of the campuses on selection of the president. And with I very much respect the partnership because I think we're all trying to get to the same area, which is that the best interest of all of California.
Clarify that for me then. When you talk about a community forum, it didn't happen before the process began and it didn't happen after, even though it's an option.
Yes, but it did not occur.
Did not occur before or no
It
one
is-
visited
it-
the campus by any kind of committee?
The finalists.
The finalists, right?
Finalists.
Okay, even though it's an option, it didn't occur.
Correct. And so to the point of Senator Hancock, as I mentioned in my opening, that the intent of this is to be inclusive, certainly, and I recognize the focus that you have with respect to our institutions, and I am in complete agreement that we should continue to be one California, not us versus them mentality. And so should it be the interest of this committee to collaborate and work together to strengthen the bill, I would be very much receptive to the generosity at changing from the trustees shall not appoint a person to the trustees shall require a person, and trying to be more inclusive. Certainly, if it's this committee's desire to try and make the bill stronger in this policy discussion, would be receptive to that, certainly. And I think, Senator, you wish to hear from the proponents?
I think what's important for us is that for so many years, so many of our presidents went through a process where at some point during their hiring process, and this happens, I was reading through a whole list of different universities that were bringing 3 candidates to campus to give talks about, about their vision for the university, which then brings out students, faculty, staff to hear what's the vision of this person who's going to be our leader when they come to campus. And the representation and the committees are fine, and I don't think there's any desire to eliminate those. But at a certain point, the entire community of the campus is going to have to be working with this leader. And what we've been missing over the last 5 years is that there has this whole thing cloaked in secrecy. No names get out. No one knows who's being considered, what's coming, and have any way. And yet that's going to be the person that we're all going to have to figure out how to work with in the preceding years. Sometimes the choices have been wonderful, and that's, campuses are delighted. Other times it's not been so good, and there's been a lot of hostility and anger. And I think we could sort of avoid all of that if we gave the campuses an opportunity to see the results of this deliberative process so that they get to see who they're getting to work with, who they may be working with. So I don't think you do your candidate any favors when you just have them show up on opening day and say, "Hi, I'm your president." We've seen it. We've seen a couple of instances over at Sac State, for example. The president there actually said in his opening remarks, "I'm sorry that I'm just getting to meet you today for the first day of class." So this is something that is really designed to kind of build a stronger community. It doesn't exclude anyone. It actually is far more inclusive and gives everyone an opportunity to see what kinds of choices and decisions have been made. It's something we did for years and years and years, and we have a long history of having hired good, strong leadership in the CSU. I agreed with some, I didn't agree with others, but nevertheless, this kind of an open process has a long history and has worked very well. The smaller numbers of folks who applied for the job that was cited earlier by the CSU, I think we have to bear in mind there was a recession. We did have budget cuts in the CSU, and so the number of applicants in that kind of a situation might have been reduced as people were concerned about what was going on here in the state. But
I see a conversation going between the CSU and the author. Would you like to hold this over and see if you can work out your differences and come back next week for a vote?
As I had a fruitful conversation with you, Senator, Madam Chair, about this, I think it would be the interest of mine to see if there's a willingness with this committee to be supportive of the bill, and if there's an opportunity to modify some of the languages that Senator Hancock mentioned about shall versus require. Certainly, I'd be receptive to that.
Well, I would not like to just, wordsmith it here today. I'd rather have you just come back and give us, an amendment so that we can vote it up or down, that kind of thing, and work with, if the two of you would work together to try to work this out. Because I don't think, I think everybody has some good points here, and I think some clarification needs to happen. And if you're open to that, we're happy to try to get this bill going. So that's a suggestion.
As I mentioned, I think that we've had some pretty fruitful conversation, and I think we would, with respect, like to try an opportunity to move it forward as is, and again, in the setting here,
Sure.
I'll work with this committee.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen. We only have 3 weeks left.
Yeah, time is a consideration. Having heard all this, I'm not sure the argument has been made why we need to change it. From what I've heard, some compelling reasons why it ought to stay the way it is. In particular, we did ask the CSU to come up with more diversity, and they've done that. We asked them to keep the runaway compensation in check, and they've been doing a better job. I won't say they've solved that problem yet, but it's better. And, within my district, I have CSU Fullerton and Cal Poly Pomona, and I have to say the product of that, Dr. Garcia, Dr. Coley, are excellent. And you have made the comment that, well, actually, one of the testifiers made the comment that sometimes the selections are wonderful. Well, does that mean prior to this new policy, all the selections were wonderful? I doubt it. So, you have a student body which we want to include, and there is a process that's been adopted that is inclusive. But these students are going to be there, we hope, only 4 years. It's more like 6 years and sometimes longer. But the university has to take a long-time perspective, and usually these presidents are there. If they've done a good job, they're there longer than 4 years or 6 years. And so I think this is a solution in place of a problem. I'm not likely to support it today or the next time, but I'm willing to look at your stuff. But I think you would be wise to respect the wishes of the chair. That's it.
Senator Block.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, because if the author does decide to put this over for vote only, we need to get from the witnesses whatever we can today. I was a little disturbed by the CSU testimony that one reason they're opposed to this bill is the idea of keeping a lid on compensation, because once the trustees vote, the presidential candidate has just a couple hours to sign the contract. Sound a little bit like when I'm buying a car and they're holding my trade-in and, you know, sign on the dotted line. I hate to think we have presidents who are subject to that kind of pressure and who go along with that. I mean, that's disturbing. Probably not a major issue here, but that's an argument I don't like. I'm still totally confused and haven't heard a good answer. Usually, my friends in the faculty and my friends in the student body agree on things like this. Having you disagree, I haven't really heard why you're in disagreement. Why are the students wrong? Why is the faculty wrong? Can you tell me?
I would just say that the testimony I heard, with all due respect, there's nothing in this bill that would eliminate the students participating in the advisory committee and doing all of the things that were described. I think that's wonderful, and it gives them an opportunity to engage in that way and have the experience. But that's not even on the table for being changed. What we're looking at is when that process has come to the point where there is a or some finalists that.
So it sounds like the students are being foolish to oppose this, so why are you opposing it?
No, not at all, Senator. The issue here is that the committee allows for shared governance to take place because there is representation and a student is there throughout the entire process. If we go to an open forum and candidates are coming to the campus, that does not mean that students are going to be there to have representation, because students have class, students aren't able to be on campus, or faculty who work there who have the authority to make a decision to go to this, the students would lose ground and there would not be an equal representation through the process.
So last question then for the faculty, why are you doing something that the students feel will exclude them?
I don't understand how it will exclude them. If we have a forum on campus, the way in which so many other universities do, that's not a forum that's limited to faculty or limited to staff, but it's open to the entire university. So if anything, what it would do is mean that students who actually live on the campus, who actually participate on campus, would get to see the faces of these candidates.
If you don't mind, Mayor, just last word from the students.
And Senator, like at my campus, Cal Poly Pomona, a majority of our students are commuter students. They're not able to be on campus and participate in that. And from my experience, when we have open forums for different issues that take place on a campus, students don't come out and attend these events. So you have a student who's been elected and selected and is agreeing to participate in this process and to represent the student body and are held accountable by a body of students on the campus, the associated students. An open process would not guarantee student participation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Huff and then Senator Hancock.
I'll do it quickly because we've debated this thing to death, I think.
Right.
But on compensation, I think one thing we've heard over the years is our CSU and our UC presidents are undercompensated when it comes to competition nationally. And so you do sometimes need to, I wouldn't use the car sales, but you know, all things being considered, is the compensation enough to attract you to the job? Because there's only so much they can give, right? I mean, we're not going to give them unlimited budget to do these things. And there is a ripe spot that, you know, the more if you have time to go out and shop, maybe somebody else, hey, you know, they've offered me $400,000 over here, you know, you think you can see me 50 and, you know? So it's just, you got a decision, make the decision. There are times when a more structured process like this makes sense. I think they've accomplished their objectives that we have actually asked them to do, and for that reason, I think the existing policy, at least give it a few more years and see if there's, you know, more buy-off in the process.
Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I just have a last question too, suggested by Senator Block. Because for me, this isn't a debate. I'm honestly trying to understand what's happening and what would be improved or not improved by a decision that we, who are very not involved in the CSU on a daily basis, are being asked to make. Is this seen as a meet and greet with a finalist or designated president-to-be to find out more about their vision and to express the concerns of the campus? Or is this a vetting, after which time, if people, through their union, through their student organization, through whatever, the faculty association decide they don't like that person, they will then have a situation where they will demand or ask that that person not be appointed. Because I think the purpose of the meeting and the spirit in which it is conducted may have a great deal to do with candidates wanting to either be involved at all in the search or whether or not they would choose to participate.
Sure, and I think that specifically mentions in the bill the forum setup and the framework to allow for that dialogue and conversation. But in the interest of time, Madam Chair, the representative from CSU and I have been in conversation here, so with your recommendation, certainly would love to have an opportunity to work with CSU with amendments potentially, and then coming back with your consideration.
We would appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's next?